Hey guys, so grab a drink and a barf bag because I'm pretty sure we'll probably be getting into the more to be like a 50 Shades of Potter type thing where Hermione is now going to uh the High Reeves abode to engage in unconsensual underage sex. So they're basically being made to be baby machines to repopulate, and Hermione is one of them, along with other girls like Cho Chang and Romilda Vane and a few other ones that are familiar. But keep in mind they're 15 years old. All right, so 15 years old. Harry Potter is dead. Ron is dead. Everyone is pretty much dead. And the women, the girls, they're not even women, they're girls, are being kept alive to repopulate. They'll go to their homes and essentially be raped by whoever it is that they're being given to. Um, so I might do more than one chapter this time. I don't know why it's been doing that. One chapter at a time, but there's 1018 pages, and I'm only on page 37. So, might want to pick up speed. I gotta go fast. But anyway, plus I can't wait to get up to number 15. I have a feeling chapter 15 will be, but this is chapter 4. Okay, so I think, let's see. Yeah, Hermione had just been sent off to the High Reeves estate. Helpless, defenseless, obedient. Yeah. And she was whisked away. Alright, so yeah, she's at the High Reeves house. Or estate. House makes it sound like those filthy mudblood homes. Small. Anyway. Hermione reappeared in a dark foyer. It was immaculate, empty room. A black, lacquered, circular table sat in the center of the room. There was a large bouquet of white flowers on the table. She turned slowly. She didn't want to miss any detail, but the stupid wings of the bon— oh yeah, their dress basically like Handmaid's Tale. We got the white bonnets and the red robes and everything. Because the person who wrote this seems to think that's what the America or the country or the world's coming to. you know. Um uh the stupid wings of the bonnet acted like blinders. She could only see straight ahead. A large stairway lay to the right. Cold hallways led into the darkness and further into the house. It was a manor, an enormous one based on the width of the staircase. Hello, mudblood. A cold voice made her freeze. Oh, she slowly turning all the way around. She found Draco Malfoy. He was older. Her last memory of him was 5th year when he was on the Inquisitorial squad. He had grown taller. I mean, yeah, things happened within like a year or so. He towered. He was always tall. I mean, even when they put him and Harry like face to face, he's always also kind of random. But like in Chamber of Secrets, you notice how he looked like he got younger and older just randomly throughout the movie. Like in the beginning of the movie, like when they're in Flourish and Blots, and he comes down, he's like, "Bet you loved that, didn't you? Famous Harry Potter. Can't even go to a bookstore without making a front page." And he was, his voice was deeper and he was taller. But then later on, when he's talking about to Crabbe and Goyle about, not knowing who opened the Chamber of Secrets, but when all he knows is that last time a mother girl died, he sounds like a child. It's but yeah, he's always been a tall boy. And also, you're welcome. I'm pretty sure there are some people who are like, John, I also noticed that with Draco in the movie. How he just like got like older and younger in the same movie. I think Elijah Wood had the same issue in Lord of the Rings. Like, he would look older even though he was already grown. He would look different certain scenes. It was very inconsistent. Um, Her last memory of him was in fifth year in Inquisitorial Squad. He had grown taller. He towered over her, and his face had lost every trace of boyishness. There was a dangerous, refined brutality in the way he held himself. The way he looked at her. His eyes were like a wolf's, bold and feral. And he's like, I'm gonna get me some mudblood. The deadliness in him was palpable. As he looked down at her, she felt certain he could lean forward and cut her throat while staring into her eyes, then stepped back, only caring that she not get blood on his shoes. He was the High Reeve. Wow, what a twist! Voldemort's right hand. I said it would have been great if Voldemort's right hand was actually literally his right hand. You know, he transmog or transfigured it into like an actual human being, because who better to carry out the will of the Dark Lord than a piece of the Dark Lord? But ooh, Draco. Okay, this was definitely a Draco Hermione fanfic, because there was a lot of that. Voldemort's right hand, his executioner. The number of her friends that he had murdered: Ginny, McGonagall, Moody, Neville, Dean, Seamus, Professor Sprout, Madame Pomfrey, Flitwick, Oliver Wood. Oh God, not Oliver Wood. The list went on and on. Aside from those who had been tortured to death immediately after the final battle, every person she knew had to be dead following the war. The High Reeve had killed them. The girls had whispered to her during the first few nights, telling her about the world of horror she had missed while locked under Hogwarts. She hadn't thought that he'd be someone she knew, someone so young. Terror welled up inside her, and she wasn't sure what to do to handle the shock. Before she could react or even process the realization, his eyes locked with hers, and he abruptly slammed his way into her mind. Oh God, mind rape. The force almost made her black out. His mental intrusion was like a blade, diving straight into her memories. He sliced through the fragile barrier that she tried to erect. See, when we go to the mind stuff, then they start using the more phallic imagery of some erect and thrusting and forcing, and with the shreds of internal magic she could summon, he drilled in her blocked memories. It was like having a nail driven into her head. The precision and the unrelenting force. He wouldn't try to break through. He wouldn't stop trying to break through. It felt almost worse than the Cruciatus curse. It lasted longer than the torture curse would, longer than torture curse could, without driving the recipient insane. When he finally stopped, she found herself lying on the ground. Malfoy was standing over her, staring down at her as she shuddered from the trauma of his intrusion. Yeah, it's mind rape. It's mind rape. He's getting mind fucked. But, that's not enough to get someone pregnant, so unfortunately, we're going to have to get to that part. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. She could, so you really have forgotten everything, he said as he appraised her. What is it you think you're protecting in that brain of yours? You lost the war. She couldn't answer. She had no answer. Oh well, he said, straightening his robe slightly. The Dark Lord was kind enough to send you to me. If ever you do recover your memories, I'll be the first to know. He smirked down at her for a moment before his face grew cold and indifferent. Then he stepped over her body and walked out of the room. Hermione dragged herself to her feet, shaking from the mental anguish and impotent rage she felt. She hated him. She had never hated Draco Malfoy before. I mean, that's not true. She has hated Malfoy before. Bitch, why the fuck you lying? He had simply been an indoctrinated bully, a symptom of a disease which others were responsible for. Now she hated him for what he had become, for what he had done. He owned her. She was trapped under his heel and intended to grind her down until he had what he wanted. Well, technically it's for the Dark Lord, so, it's for Voldemort, so it's not what he wants. They're doing it for the Dark Lord. She clenched her jaw as she forced herself to think to think past her sudden rage. Her plan remained the same. She had to find a way to escape or trick him into killing her. I mean, shouldn't be too hard. He wasn't what she expected. She had hoped the High Reeve would be driven by emotions, and although the Malfoy she had known had been in school had been, now he seems ice cold. Bum 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 bum. Which, of course, she should have realized. Legitimacy, oculancy, the key to them was control. The ability oneself behind walls. It would take cunning to make him snap enough to make a mistake like killing her. Whatever she did, I'm actually curious. I actually kind of like want to skip to the back, the final page or the final chapter just because, but I'm not going to. I haven't read any of this beforehand. I want it to be just as a surprise to me as it is to everyone else. So, um, so yeah, whatever I read, it's my first time reading. So, just keep in mind there might be some disgusting shit. So just keep that in mind. Now where was I? Whatever she did, she wouldn't be able to accomplish it immediately. She couldn't rush it. She couldn't be careless. She would have to stay there, wait, and endure what was to come until she found an opening. The thought had made her shudder, had her shuddering. Her throat felt tight as she swallowed and tried to think. A click of heels on the wood floor drew her attention. A petite blonde witch swept into the room. She and Hermione stared at each other for several long moments. "So, you're it?" the witch said, elevating her nose with a sniff. "So it's you, then. Take that stupid hat off and come along. We have to review the instructions all together before I can put you away where we're to keep you." The blonde turned on her heel and marched back out of the room. Hermione followed slowly. The witch was familiar. A green grass, Hermione thought. Not Daphne, but maybe the younger sister. Hermione couldn't remember her name. They arrived in a drawing room. Malfoy was already there. Was already there. Reclining in a spindly-looking chair and looking bored. Hermione pulled the bonnet off. "So," said the witch Hermione assumed to be Malfoy's wife. She seated herself on one of the other spindly chairs. "Healer Strauss sent over a package of instructions. Who knew mudbloods came with directions? So convenient, isn't it? Your first mudblood, you need to be prepared. Your first mudblood, what to expect." The sarcasm in the witch's sharp little voice was brittle. "Just read it, Astoria," Malfoy said, glancing briefly toward the witch with a sneer. Astoria. So that was the name of Malfoy's wife. "Let's see. No cursing or torturing or physically abusing her. She's to be kept well fed. We can make her work, but no more than 6 hours a day. And she spends at least an hour outside each day. You gotta walk them. Otherwise, they're gonna piss and shit all over the carpet." Astoria laughed somewhat maniacally. "It's rather like keeping Krups, isn't it? Who knew? Ah, yes, how delightful. We'll get an owl every month on the 5 days you're required to perform, Draco. Healer Stroud has included a little personal note here mentioning the due to the Dark Lord specific interest in the Malfoy family and the Mudblood. He'll be coming in person every month to see whether you're successful. Again, the whole point is to try to get Hermione pregnant. So, she will essentially be raped until she gets pregnant. And then, I guess she will just be continued to be used to repopulate. That Hermione was surprised she hadn't started screaming and smashing a chair like the last girl. Listen to this. I'm allowed to watch, to make sure everything is entirely clinical between you and the mudblood. Astoria turned shockingly pale. Her blue eyes were almost deranged. Her hands were shaking, and she crumpled up the papers in her hand and smacked them down on the tea table. I will not, she said, with a voice razor-edged and vibrating. If you object, you can drag me in the front of the Dark Lord himself before you avada me. I will not. I will not watch. Um, she did scream that last bit. Do what you wish. Just shut up. Such a loving husband. He really is. So tender and delicate. Malfoy said, his tone vicious as he stood up and strode from the room. Hermione stood frozen near the wall. Astoria sat shaking in her chair for several minutes before she spoke to Hermione. My mother bred Krups. Pretty little things, Astoria said. Such fun to see it done now with wizards. Hermione said nothing. She just stood there by the wall, trying not to move, willing her fingers not to spasm. I am pretending to be a tree, she thought faintly to herself. Finally, Astoria stood up. I'll show you to your room. You can do what you want there, but I don't want to see you. I understand that those bracelets you have keep you from any trouble. Partially concealed door that led to the winding servants' stairway. After ascending 3 floors, they re-entered into a larger main hallway of the house. They were in a different wing. The windows were heavily draped. It was cold and shrouded, the furniture all covered with white dust sheets. This wing is unoccupied, Astoria said, as though it weren't obvious. We have more servants that we need. Stay here and out of sight unless you're called for. The portraits will keep an eye on you. Astoria pushed open a door. Hermione walked in. It was a large bedroom. A canopied bed sat in the center, and a single winged backed chair near the window. A large wardrobe sat against one wall. There was no rug. A portrait hung on the wall. No books. Everything was cold and bare. If you need anything, call a house elf, Astoria said before. Not Dobby, though, because Dobby's a free elf. Also, no, he's probably still alive here. But Dobby is a free elf. Hermione listened to her retreating footsteps. Being suddenly left unsupervised without being in a cell felt disorienting. A sudden change simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, as though she'd suddenly jumped off a cliff. She dropped her bonnet on the floor next to the door and walked over to the window. The cold, wintry countryside stretched out as far as she could see. As she took it in, she considered the situation. Maybe I should just jump out the window and kill myself. I mean, it said that she's on, like, the 3rd floor. Dive face first into the ground, Hermione. Come on. Don't be a pussy. Do it. Do it. So, I mean, you want a way out. Unless they say that the windows are barred. But, Malfoy and Astoria clearly disliked each other. You don't say. No. Malfoy is just so attentive as a husband, and she just seems like an absolute darling, It was hardly surprising, as if pure-blood arranged marriages weren't already dysfunctional enough. Having them arranged by Voldemort for the sole purpose of reproduction had to have smothered any potential spark, especially after they failed to reproduce. Astoria did not seem particularly afraid of Malfoy, so presumably he wasn't so short-tempered as to be violent to her, and she seemed largely resentful of and indifferent to him. Well, sometimes that's what you need to keep him in place. Someone who's not afraid, He tries to pull his bullshit, and she's like, no, I'm not doing this right now. But it also works the other way around. Same thing with a woman. If the woman acts like Draco, there needs to be a guy there to be like, no, we're not fucking doing this right now. He did not appear to be an attentive husband. What are you talking about? By any stretch of the imagination, his regard for Astoria seemed to be along the lines of finding her to be a pest he was obliged to endure. Whatever Astoria may feel about her husband or marriage, Hermione's presence as a surrogate clearly stung. Well, I mean, obviously, because despite the fact that you hate your husband, you still expect to be the only person in that person's life. And then some person, got someone coming in to basically be a breeding machine. So it's not like Draco has to have any real relation. No, he rapes her. They have sex. That's the whole purpose. You know, sex. They can have her as a servant and work and this and that. But he's not supposed to be like a lovey-dovey or anything like with a wife or something. So, you know, yeah, seeing that would definitely piss a wife off. Um, Hermione's presence clearly stung. She seemed determined to ignore Hermione's existence as much as she possibly could. Hermione had no objection. The fewer players she had to worry about, the better. If she had to worry about fending off or appeasing Astoria, it would be an additional challenge. If Astoria were attentive to her husband, it would make escaping or finding a way to manipulate Malfoy far more challenging. If Astoria was primarily preoccupied by pretending Hermione didn't exist, it was the easiest scenario. Hermione would keep out of the sight, in the shadows, as much as she could until there was an opportunity to act. The key would be to study Malfoy, discover what drove him, what his vices were, what she could exploit in him. He didn't seem particularly interested in Hermione beyond finding out what she may be concealing in her lost memories. If that were the case, it was a relief. Perhaps he would also primarily choose to leave her alone. Probably. I mean, they already have a house elf, so why would they need Hermione to do their shit? I mean, it's. She was sure that if he wished, he could come up with any number of ways to torture her without risking her fertility. Draco Malfoy was a high reeve. It was still shocking. What had happened to him during the war to make him so ruthless? Everything. You don't know what I lost, or something. I don't know. The hardest required, or the hatred required to successfully cast a killing curse was tremendous. That's one reason why they thought Dumbledore wasn't dead at first. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert, Snape kills Dumbledore. That's why people didn't think that Dumbledore really wasn't actually dead, because we knew that Snape was just told to do it by Dumbledore. So people were like, oh, well, if you look at the spell when he casts it, it's not green like it's supposed to be. It's more like yeah, it was like, oh, it was blue and this and that, so he didn't have his full heart into it. So Dumbledore, despite falling however many feet down onto the ground, he was somehow still alive. So, but yeah, you need it's like with all of them. You need, like with the Cruciatus Curse, you need to have that desire to torture. I mean, I think Voldemort says that to Harry in Order of the Phoenix. He kind of does the Cruciatus Curse, but because his heart isn't in it, it's not as effective. You need to have that desire, that to hurt, to cause pain. If it's, if you're just using, yeah, he's like, you have to have the heart to do it. If you're just like Crucio or Avada Kedavra, it's not going to really do anything. But yeah. Those dark wizards and witches could only manage it occasionally. That was part of why there were so many so many other curses to use to kill. Sadism factored into it, but the truth was that no other curse was irreversible and unstoppable, and the way the killing curse was. The power necessary to utilize something so final was, well, there was really nothing to compare it to. Voldemort's ability to cast it repeatedly and unfailingly was part of the reason he inspired such terror. The High Reeve's reputation for using the curse was already equally legendary. It vaulted him into the highest rank of the Death Eaters. It was also Malfoy, and it was Malfoy. She would have to move carefully. The casualness which with which the Malfoys had treated her arrival indicated utter assurance, leaving her in the foyer, showing her through the house, putting her into an unoccupied wing. Hermione was certain there was no easy way to escape. Until she could get the manacles off, Malfoy would always be able to find her, and she is incapable of fighting him off, fighting off him or anyone else. She sighed, and breath made a small circle of condensation on the cold glass of the window pane. Lifting a fingertip to the glass, she drew the rune Thuris has for defense, introspection, and focus. Beside it, she drew it in reverse, the Merkstave, for danger, defenselessness, malice, hatred, and spite. What she needed, what she had. She had to reverse her fortune. She watched the runes fade from the glass as the condensation evaporated back into the room. None of the girls had heard of any whispers about the resistance still existing. Aside from Hermione, all of the Order members who survived the final battle were known to be dead, their bodies publicly witnessed, their corpses hung up to ensure that there was room for no room for secret hopes. The resistance had crumbled upon Harry's death. Harry Potter is dead! Voldemort appeared to have been careful about ensuring that the Order of the Phoenix had no spark with which to resurrect itself. As the war had dragged on over the years, he had grown more cautious and less certain about the infallibility that he had been during the Hermione's years at Hogwarts. Voldemort was thorough. That was troubling. If he had elevated Malfoy to High Reeve, it probably meant the Malfoy was also thorough, not someone inclined to make mistakes or errors in judgment. Maybe there was a resistance somewhere. The women of Hogwarts had only known what the guards told them. There might still be some factions working against Voldemort. If Hermione escaped, maybe she could find them and eventually give them whatever secret she was hiding. Since she was in the High Reeve's house, perhaps if she were clever, she'd be able to glean useful information. If she kept acting pliant and cooperative, broken, if they thought she was truly broken, they might eventually become careless around her. She would be waiting for it. She was very good at waiting. That's the end of chapter 4. I don't know if I want to go another one. With the mic being stupid and all. Shouldn't be giving me issue. I had to check to see if the thing was fully plugged in, and so I think I will just stop here for now. I might do it again later on, but what other things to do right now anyway, so can't sit here reading some, rape story of Harry Potter characters all day. But yeah. Also, I think instead of the High Reeves house, I think it's just Malfoy Manor. I mean, if it's Draco there, I think it's just Malfoy Manor. I seriously doubt he's moved out. Even if something happened to Lucius, I mean, the house is his. So I think it's just Malfoy Manor. But anyway, just count the chapters now before we get to the actual stuff. Anyway, that's gonna do for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.